এই তো নাটক বলুন আর ওটা কোনটা বল কালার বল এবার আপনার মনে হয় বরাবর করে দিই ওই আমরা যেটা বলছিলাম
Okay, so for someone who loves saris, any conversation about the sari is incomplete without the mention of Bailu, which is why we're talking to you today.
Thank you.
And for me, it's also not something that ever went out of fashion or something that I had to go back to or reinvent, probably because everybody, it's the same for everybody in the house or where you grow up. But there's so much of conversation about bringing back the sari, and there are 90-day sari packs, and it's all over Instagram. It has been now for a while. Is there
True.
really a dip in the number of people or the interest in the sari?
I think we have to look at two different situations here: pre-COVID and post-COVID. I think what you're talking about, the 100 sari pact and all that, happened pre-COVID.
Yes.
And at that time, pretty much, I would say the whole. Women were really coming towards sari and taking sari and owning the drape in their own way. Post-COVID, what has happened, since we are all trapped in our houses, the occasions have really kind of dried out. The people don't go out. You're not also invited over to people. So the occasion for wearing saris, I think, really has diminished. And one thing I think we have to really understand is lately sari had become a occasion wear. I mean, like when I grew up, I saw my grandmother and my mothers only wear sari all the time. Like they had a house wear sari, they had a sari to, go for weddings. They had different saris to go for different occasions. So now there are professions like teachers and professors and some corporates who still wear saris to office as per their professional needs. But post-COVID, all this has changed, and since we are working from home, you're not going out and you're not being called over, or you're not getting together with friends. So the wearing sari post-COVID, I would say, have really, really gone down. And it's a worry in a way where I'm thinking, unless we go back to our earlier social meets and gatherings, would really people wear and buy saris anymore? That's a question which I am asking myself also.
One more thing that interested me, that I find most interesting actually about Bailu, is that you work with traditional weavers. You started in 2002, is that correct?
Yeah. In Fulia district in Nadia. It was a coincidence, because I wasn't always very lean towards weaving. I was more of a printing kind of a person. I went to Philadelphia to specialize in printing. But in Philadelphia, when I went around and saw things, and I also had the opportunity of working with various textile artists over there as a part of my job. So that really opened up my idea, my vision towards looking at Indian traditional textiles, and realize the amount of wealth we still have, that we can still weave and create our own fabrics, which the West, I think, has completely lost it, unless it's only limited to a hobby. It's only come down to a hobby level. But in India, we still weave, we still create, and we still have enough people to weave and supply and support the market. When you want to really create your brand, especially in textiles, you need to create a different texture than that is available in the market, and handloom was probably the only way where I could have achieved that. So another thing which really stuck with me and made me continue and be with this community of weavers is that when me and my wife Rumi, we first went to the village to just see how the weaves are being done. And what I saw in that village on that day, it was around 2001, sometime around that time, was really heartbreaking, because I saw at that time the market for the traditional weavers were so bad at that time that they were literally dismantling of the wooden structure of the loom, and they were selling it off as firewood. So that really kind of touched both of us, and we thought that with all our expertise in textiles, and both of us we are textile design trained, so we thought that if we can use our education to work with this community and help them come up with something which is different than what they were doing at that point of time. So that would open up new markets, because the traditional market of the saris were shrinking. The traditional sari market was shrinking. So lifestyle of a woman by that time, by the turn of the millennium, had really changed. Their lifestyle had changed. I mean, women were going out, they were working in corporate houses, in board meetings, doctors, engineers, and in the evening they were, probably, I mean, they had to run to a book reading somewhere, or to a social gathering. So sometimes they didn't have the time to change. So the traditional saris of Bengal at that time were the Tangai saris, the most popular ones. They were so heavily starched. The colors were so different. They had all zari borders, and the patterns didn't really match the woman's environment that had really changed, and the weavers had no clue about that, because they are so glued in to their traditional patterns and work, that they don't really look beyond it, that how the market has changed.
But is it difficult to work with traditional weavers who have been following a certain kind of style and pattern over the years to unlearn that to do newer things?
See, it was definitely difficult initially, because initially when you want to change something, there is always resistance from the other side. And but what we did is we gave patiently time to it. It is a matter of time, because it is, you need to convince, because I don't sit and weave. They will have to sit and weave. So I needed to convince them and put in that confidence in them, what they're weaving is actually marketable. Their fear, basically, I realized over the years, why they don't want to change, or most designers, when they go to work with traditional weavers, they feel that resistance, because the fear in them is that what they would weave is not marketable, and because it is not marketable, they will lose their job, because when they are stopping to other work to weave my work, they are putting in their time, energy into it. And also, the entire, in India, how the weaving belt works is they work in a Mahajan system, where someone else has bought the yarns and dyed it for you and given you the designs, and you're working for that person. So the moment he has to change for me, means he has to leave his work and work for me. So they are not always confident that the person who is going from the city as a designer is going to stick around with them long time. So they don't want to lose out on it, because it's a question of their livelihood. So we gave them that time. We had to go to the extent of, in fact, buying a property over there, building up a small house and staying over there, just to, put in that confidence in them that we are not running away. And then, it was magical. They just opened up. And once they opened up, anything could be done. Today, the fact how experimental you see our saris are, or our textures are, the way we mix different things. We have woven with steel, we have woven with anything on earth. Recently last year, I participated at the Serendipity Art Festival, doing a series of 20 pieces of loom finished garments. They wove garments on the loom itself, and these were all wild weaves with a traditional weave like Jamdani. So they are open to it now, because we have given that time. I have literally sat with them in the beginning. I used to sit with them and show them. First, when I started the concept of weaving sequins, They said impossible, it's not possible. But then I sat with them, because I know how to weave. I sat with them and showed them a little bit and said that this is possible, you can weave it. And it's not that I have to teach you any new things. These are something which you know. It's only that you have to tweak your mind and accept the fact that you want to do something different, So that took time.
Tell us a little bit about some of these the different kinds of things that you first introduced. Like you said, weaving with sequins. Then there was the gicha.
Gicha yarn probably was only used for home furnishing at that time, because it's a very thick, slubby, rough, coarse yarn. And what we started doing is we started implementing first through our jamdanis with the extra weft technique. And then one day there were so many experiments we used to do, that we wove one whole sari with a very gauzy weave with the gicha, and it was again a different texture. So Bailu saris became known for its gicha textures, which people started calling jute. I think all over the India, everywhere you go, people say jute, but actually it's not jute, and you can't wear jute. Jute is very, very scratchy. So it's the gicha texture which became very popular. Then we introduced the transparent pallu, where the body was solid, opaque, and that pallu was transparent with patterned, motif in it. So that also became a very signature Bailu Jamdani sari. That is probably like a lot of times we get phone calls from people saying that, do you sell Bailu saris? So I say, of course, I am Bailu. So then, so one day I asked one of them, what do you mean by a Bailu sari? What is a Bailu sari to you? And she said, transparent pallu with gicha patterns. I said, oh, so so these definitely went into people's mind and made that mark. Second, I think we wove the sequins. So Rumi went and taught the women how to make sequin yarns with a crochet needle, and today that has become a second income generation for the women of the village. Sometimes women earn more than the husband. And then we also introduced the concept of double cloth, where we create pockets and we slip in sequins inside and trap it in the weave itself. So there's no thread involved in it, and we won a UNESCO seal of excellence for that technique. Then I think we introduced the double. I didn't introduce the double cloth, was always there, but then what I did is I played around with the construction of the double cloth and made layered texture. Fabric. Say a double cloth or a triple cloth, and you could see there are different layers. One was small, and we opened up the selvages. We joined in the middle, which we call the cross flap, which is one of the most popular scarves and our signature scarf. And so all these experiments started happening, and we created different things.
I remember there was a phase on one of my Kolkata visits when, like you said, jute. Everybody was doing a jute sari, and एक दो बार I think people said Bailu jaisa hai. So did you ever feel bad that it was being aped, or that it was sort of there were replicas that you could?
No, of course, initially I used to get very scared and very worked up and angry about it, because I used to get very nervous, and fact that when you create something after so much of experimentation and hard work, when you see someone just taking it off, it really hurts you. No matter people keep telling me that, imitation is the best flattery and all of that, but it's hard to kind of um, contain it and really believe in it. But over the years, what has happened to me, I have realized Bailu has become a generic term in itself now. Bailu is no more just my brand. Bailu has become a kind of a sari. And it's very, I think it is very, very, it's a blessing almost to get to see it in your lifetime that what you have created has become a genre rather than a brand. So that is one. And also another thing I feel over the years that the fact that the weavers have taken up this style of weaving or the experimentation of the yarns or the textures we have created, they have taken it up is also a contribution we have given it back to the community.
What was the disco khadi?
Disco Khadi was that concept where we actually trapped the sequins inside the cloth and we wove this sari, which was a hand spun cotton in the warp and the weft, and which is khadi basically, and it was being hand woven. And what we did is, I always had this dream that Bailu saris would be worn for all occasions. And even if today you want to go to a discotheque for a dancing and you actually want to flaunt a sari, you should be able to wear a hand woven sari. That was my dream, that I should be able to penetrate into all spheres of life. So a woman had a choice. I mean, if a woman today wants to wear a sari and not wear a Western outfit to discotheque, she should be able to have a sari for herself that she would feel comfortable on the dance floor. So so that was why I was pushing myself, and disco khadi happened out of that, and that slight glimmer and shimmer. And I think I got the biggest compliment from Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. She happened to be in one of their first exhibitions where I put out the sari, and she got so intrigued with the name that khadi could be disco, and she said, just for the name, I want to buy that. So yeah, it's a wonderful story.
Like you have so many popular, if I can say, popular names who wear your sari. You also have really well-priced Abir saris. Is that a conscious decision to keep the range like that, like a variety in the range?
Abir Sari, the way it came up was that this was a group of weavers who used to weave, their forefathers used to weave pre-independence, the Mota Kapor, which was a symbol of freedom struggle. When Gandhiji called for boycotting all foreign goods and hand spinning and hand weaving their own fabrics. So this was the group that used to work among the many that used to make these thick cloth that would be worn by women. And obviously after independence, the whole the whole essence of the sari kind of got lost. What they would do is that they would, right now, before we started working with them, government would give them those saris to weave for charity, which used to be given away during earthquakes or flood relief, very bad quality, cheap, very, very cheap saris. So what I told them is, we have to weave quality things. We can't weave a bad thing and just for the sake of making it cheaper. But we wanted also to keep that affordability bracket because they're so used to that whole thing. And it was also fun when I see a woman wearing a abi to the fish market, or even people of all income generation love abi because it is affordable, it is beautiful. I've seen Vidya Balan wear it to the Lakme Fashion Week, and I've seen it being worn in fish market also. So it is a very, very versatile fabric.
So with the growing of the brand, with Bailu being where it is today, has it also changed things for the weavers completely, the community?
Our journey has been together to uplift the weavers that are also working with us, but in a way where we taught them what fair business practices. I think that is the most important impact that we have left behind in the communities. Over the years, we have worked with them, and we have also trained them to be entrepreneurs themselves. We have never, uh, so initially, I mean, we started working with the Mahajan, same as the Mahajan system, because that's all what they understood. But over the years, what Rumi did after 3 4 years is that she started training them with opening bank accounts. She started training them with learning how to keep accounts for themselves, taking out trade license, paying taxes, and all of that, so that they and we literally we promoted and supported any person who stood up and said, I want to become an entrepreneur. And we said, okay, so yes, you be an entrepreneur. And we gave them training for dying. We taught them what quality control is. And so now today we work with individual entrepreneurs. We don't own the looms. They own the looms. They own the product, and they do business with us like any proper business person would be doing a business transaction. So that is something which we have inculcated in them, and so which became a blessing, because when the demonetization happened, I think we were the only, probably the brand in Bengal at least, where our weavers had no problem because they already had bank accounts. All our transaction happens through the banks. We don't deal with cash. So they were already prepared for that. And I have to tell you, because you asked this question, is during the pandemic when it was really bad and there were a lot of the migrant workers coming back to the villages, some of my weavers, they individually fed around 300 400 people on their own. So they were empowered enough over the years with finance and confident enough to be able to do that and not reach out to me for help, for finance or money or anything.
And at which stage of this journey did the store, the Bailoom store happen?
The Bailoom store happened much later. It's happened, I think, in 2011. By 2009 and 10, we were actually looking for a space because we really thought that Bailoon, the product Bailoon, needed a like a physical store. That's how that store came up, Bailoon.
And it has a fantastic canteen. Like for most Bengalis, imagine food and saris in the same place.
Yeah, I think food and textile go hand in hand. I always feel textile lovers are big foodies themselves, and we are also big foodies. And I had this dream of a space where there would be food and textile, because these are the two things which I really love. And that's how the concept of canteen also came. And also because along with what we were trying to establish through our textiles is exactly what Bailoom Canteen does through the food. Is it brings back the old food taste buds, like mangshet chop and all those things which were hugely famous Bengali snack, but are slowly going away because of the cafe coffee days and baristas and all of that.
My last question to you is a very personal one. It's something that I've always wanted to ask you, and I know for a fact that many of us have subtly in various conversations brought it up with you. Why do you not publicize?
I think I have always felt that me as a person, I'm not important as the work. So I have always put my work in front, and I've always let the work speak for itself. And I think that has happened. People know my work more than they know me personally. And basically, both of us, we are very private people, and we like keeping to ourselves, but we want our work definitely to be seen and to be known. Because what we wanted to really build was a solid foundation. And that kind of consumed the entire, both of us, so much that we didn't have the time for doing that. And we always believed in that organic progression, because the way we have grown is also very small. We started with 2 looms and today we work with 1200 looms. So the journey has also been very organic. So our growth, the publicity, everything has gone along with the brand. And today I think that's why even when we on our Facebook page in Bailoom, when we invite people to wear saris and we do a photo shoot, we do a photo shoot of general people who actually buy and wear our saris. We don't hire models. We don't ask celebrity and endorsement. That is something which I always feel is I'm sorry for it, but I feel is a little fake, because say for instance, a customer who loves my sari, when I ask her to wear my sari and I photograph her, she's blooming in it because she loves it, because her body language changes, her whole entire appearance kind of becomes different, because she's so intrinsically also in love with the product. And another thing is, I don't believe in fashion weeks, because I don't believe in trends. I don't believe in color forecasts, because I feel and probably because I'm not a fashion guy, I'm more of a textile person, is that because we work with the same community over and over the years, again and again. In a fashion, you need to change, because every 6 months you need to show something which is completely different, whereas we are working with the same community, with the same craft, with the same people for the last 20 years. So I think what we try to create is more classic and timeless.
Thank you. I'm going to continue wearing the sari. I'm hoping a lot more people look up the Bailoom store or the Facebook page and buy more saris. And I'm hoping, I've gotten out of my shorts and t-shirt today, particularly because my mother said I look really shabby in most of the interview. So that's why, but I'm hoping most people go back to wearing clothes and feeling good about it. And it really does feel nicer to get out of the night clothes and get into it. So I'm hoping that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.